If you're anything like me, you have an inner critic. And this inner critic has probably been with you for a very long time. Maybe it's getting in the way of you doing your magic or starting a project. Maybe it tells you that you're no good or you'll never be good enough. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think there's any way of banishing our inner critic, because actually I think the inner critic is there to help us, which probably sounds counterintuitive because the inner critic can be awful at times. But when I understood more about my inner critic, it started to change my relationship with it. So in this video, I'm going to give you some tips about getting to know your inner critic better so that you can work with it and you can work together for your own advantage. So the first one is to give your inner critic a form. Think about what your inner critic would look like. Is it a person? Is it an object? Is it an animal or something like that? What color would it be? Does it have a temperature? If it's an object, is it spiky and rough, or is it fluid and flowing? And I think a really simple way of doing this is when the inner critic shows up, just sit with it rather than getting into an argument with it like I do. Just sort of become quiet and feel in to what that's like. I don't know if that makes sense, because when I sit with things and feel them, I start to get a sense of their form and what they look like and how they feel and their colours and things. And I think we do need to be still and quiet to do that. I called mine the boss bitch. This really hard-nosed businesswoman. She had the typical, you may or may not remember if you're not as old as me, but like the shoulder pads from way back, I think in the 80s. Like a really hard-nosed businesswoman, takes no prisoners, very hard shell, difficult to crack. The next tip is to befriend your inner critic. Like I said at the beginning, this sounds really counterintuitive, but what I did was I tapped into an approach called internal family systems, which you may or may not have heard of. I think it's been around for a while, but I seem to be hearing about it a lot more. And I found an exercise for identifying different parts of the system, and one of them was a very critical part for me. I'll put a link to it down in the description because I found the exercise really helpful. And I journaled through it. I sort of sat and talked with it and then journaled out the responses that I got through doing the exercise. It helped me to learn what's really behind the critical comments of my inner critic. This inner critic is really hard on me. She doesn't give me any let up. If I want to rest, that is not an option. She wants me to keep going. And when I journaled to learn more about her using the questions from that link, I realized that actually this driven behavior from her was actually relating to fear. It was a fear of not being good enough, of being perceived as not good enough. She's trying to protect me from quote unquote failure, because I have worked myself so hard in the past because I'm frightened of failing, whatever that looks like. That tends to mean so I don't get things wrong, I'm a perfectionist. It was just this sense of, it's almost like if I fail, I'm obliterated, I'm worthless. Learning that about her really helped me to actually empathize with her and understand that she wasn't doing it to work me in the ground. She actually was doing it because she was frightened for me. That helped me to be a lot more sympathetic to her and actually started to turn the conversation around so that when she shows up and starts being hard on me, I actually say, okay, what's going on here? Why is she being so hard? What is she trying to protect me from? And so that leads into the next tip, which is to thank your inner critic. My experience of journaling about this has been that my inner critic is trying to protect me. And I imagine it will be similar for a lot of you as well. If you have a different experience of this, let me know. And so what I want to do is thank her for protecting me, but then actually saying, we don't need to do things like this. Let's think together of another way that we can do this that is healthier and that doesn't come from a place of fear. And you might need to be firm with your inner critic. There are times where I have to be firm with her and say, look, I know you're trying to look out for me, but we're not going to do that. We're not going to do another hour on the laptop, or we're not going to take on another project right now. We're going to continue with what we're doing because otherwise I'm going to burn out. The next tip is to learn the patterns of your inner critic. This means learning when your inner critic is more likely to show up and start chattering away in the background. And for me, there's a couple of times when she's more likely to show up. One is when I'm exploring a new interest or hobby or a new project that I don't know much about. This has applied recently. I've started to get back into drawing. I haven't drawn much since I was very young at school, but after literally 2 days of drawing, my inner critic was there saying, you just might as well give up now. You're never going to get the hang of this. Whereas my logical mind is saying, you just need to keep practicing. Just keep on at it. it will come. But my inner critic was there saying, no, you should know how to do this. So starting new hobbies and interests, and also I think just generally juggling different projects and not knowing when it's time to say no to taking on something new, because the inner critic wants to just take on everything that's presented to it, because if I say no, what are people going to think? And I should be able to cope with juggling lots of different things. So I have to be careful when a new opportunity is presented or a new project is presented, that I'm careful about whether or not I say yes. Those tend to be my triggers. So once you learn your triggers for the inner critic showing up and putting pressure on you, you can more likely be prepared as to when it's going to show up. But like I say, I'll put that link about the internal family systems and the exercises you can do in the description. I hope that's been helpful, and I will speak to you again soon.